Good morning to one and all. Good morning to one and all. We'll start a session in another 1 minute.
Jayashree madam, good morning. Jayashree madam.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, madam. Good morning. Very good morning.
I have joined in.
Okay.
So I'll just take up my presentations and make it ready.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Good morning, one and all present here. It gives immense pleasure to welcome you all for the day 3 1 week online FDP on research methodology of social science, tools and techniques and practices. I am Srinath BV, Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration, Vidyavartaka College of Engineering, Mysuru. Takes this opportunity to welcome our beloved HOD, Dr. PSB Balaji Rao, to this FDP. I extended my warm welcome for today's resource person, Dr. Jayashree Krishnan and Dr. Sriraj MA and Dr. Somshekar IC for today's session. And also I extended my warm welcome to all the members of organizing committee and participants for today's session. Before starting the session, I would like to request all the participants to mute the audio and video for their gadgets to have better bandwidth and clarity, and please do not present the screen in between. It gives, to give a summary of yesterday's session. Yesterday, the first Dr. Sunil MV shared his expertise on the information accessing tools and tips on how to search in a Google Scholar for literature review. Later, Dr. Ramkumar S. gave insights how to do literature review and spotting the gap. In the afternoon session, Dr. Karthika P. demonstrated through an hands-on session about reliability test and descriptive analysis using SPSS. Today, we have 3 resource persons sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. It is privilege to introduce Dr. Jayashree Krishnan, the first resource person of the today's session. Dr. Jayashree Krishnan is a professor and head, Department of MBA, St. Joseph College of Engineering, Chennai. Madam graduated from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam, and completed her PhD from JNTU, Hyderabad. With a rich experience more than 25 years, Dr. Jayashree Krishnan is in charge of the ED cell at St. Joseph College of Engineering. Madam is also coordinating the MHRD's Institute Innovation Council activities of the college, and also Madam is in charge for the incubator cell under MSME. Madam has organized and conducted various seminar and training programs on entrepreneurship development program and is also certified life coach trainer. Madam is also certified an ambassador for entrepreneurship development program by MIC and MHRD Government of India. Madam has more than 50 publications in her credit, of which many are indexed in Web of Science, ABDC, and Scopus. Madam also presented her paper in various national and international conferences and seminars. She is recognized guide for PhD. Under her guidance, 8 students are completed her PhD and 10 more are pursuing it. Madam is a member of Board of Studies of Anna University and member of Syllabus Framing Committee of Anna University. She is also closely associated with prestigious institute Madras Management Association and lifetime member of ISTE. She She has received the Best Faculty Coordinator Award in the Chennai International Youth Fest organized by Youth Development Consortium, supported by Ministry of Urban Development Ministry and Youth Affairs and Sports of Government of India. In the today's session, Madam will giving insights on selecting of objectives, formulation of hypothesis, qualitative and quantitative research. We are very honored to have you here, Madam, for today's FDP. Now I request Dr. Jayashree Krishnan to take over the session. Madam, over to you, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Srinath, for giving a nice introduction of me. And good morning, everybody who have actually logged into this session today. And let me first extend my thanks to the organizers of this particular FDP on research methodology. And special thanks to Gopal Singh sir and Narayana Swamy sir, who has invited me to share my knowledge on my limited knowledge on what is research methodology towards this particular topic, that is research methodology. Okay, research methodology is, I think, a topic which is done so much but still requires to be done every time, because there's a lot of things that people need to understand when we start our research or when we start our writing our thesis. So as and when the situations changes, as and when new research scholars get into it, they need to have a complete idea of what research methodology is. And I would like to congratulate the organizers of this particular workshop or the FDP for taking up a very current topic and very required topic for your analysis. Right. So let me actually start my presentation. Today we will be doing just a minute. I'll just share my screen, sir.
Yeah, Madam, you can. Yeah, Madam, please share this.
One second. So is my screen been shared?
Yes, Madam.
Yeah. Yes. So today you have been doing this for the past 3 days, and sir has just briefed out. On the day one, you spoke on how to decide on a research topic and how to frame your research questions. And yesterday you would have done in depth on how to conduct a literature survey, right? So today I'll be doing my study on what are research objectives, how to frame research objectives, how to formulate your research hypothesis, and I would be just giving a small word view on what is qualitative research versus the quantitative research. Okay. Now, before going in for telling on what is research objectives, we will just understand what research is, just a brief, okay? So we have seen that research is a systematic search for knowledge. Research is an organized investigation of a problem, but the investigator attempts to gain knowledge or solution to a given problem. Now, what is going to be the likely outcomes of the problem? Who is going to be benefited by these particular outcomes? Or how is this going to be different in the present environment? All these are certain questions that arise when we really wanted to conduct a research. And the answers to all those questions stems out of what is called as a research objective. A research objective is one which clearly tells you what is the solution. Now take for example in our life. Okay, if we have an idea of what is our destination in our life, it's very easy for us to actually find out a path to reach to that particular destination. So similarly, in research too, if we know what we are looking out for, then it is very easy for us to decide how we can accomplish it, right? So it is this objectives that tells us what a research scholar or what a researcher is actually trying to predict or what he is trying to find out, right? So the main purpose of research objective is to reveal what the researcher wishes to achieve through the study. It is a statement that defines the purpose of the study along with the variables that we have used in the study. So a research objective is basically the start or the defining of a research objective starts from what is intended to be achieved. Now, based on what we are, what is a clear understanding of what is the research that we are going to do, how are we going to carry out the research, and what is going to be our ultimate outcome of the research. If we have that clarity in mind, that can be very clearly stated in what is known as framing of your objectives. So if you take up the definition is very simple. It is a clear, concise, declarative statement which provides direction to investigate the variables under study. So it is something, it's a statement that you give, which is declarative in its form, which tells you what is the output or what is the outcome of your study that you are going to have. Now next is, why should we have all these objectives? Why is it important that we should define the objectives? The first is, the objectives, which is clearly stated, will give us a direction and help us to focus on the research. Like, once we state the objectives, we are going to define the scope of the study. We are going to define the scope of the research. So once we define the scope, it becomes very clear for us on how or what is the design that we are going to use, how are we going to structure our literature review, what is going to be the guidelines on which we are going to collect the data, what type of analysis tools are we going to use so that we could achieve the desired outcome. So all these could be properly executed if we clearly state, because the research objectives are the ones which tells us what is expected out of the study. The second reason why do we need to define research objective is, generally when we do a literature survey and we start our studies, we frame a research problem statement. The problem statement is generally stated in paragraph format, or it is a generalized format. But research objectives are something which narrows down your problem statements, directly links it to what your research findings are. It also helps us to organize our report. Like, once you know these are my objectives, you can always organize your study clearly into defined parts or defined phases. So each objective becomes a part of your research. The next reason why we need to have research objectives being framed properly is to avoid any diversion from the topic. Now, when we start the research, we are very enthusiastic, right? We start looking in for information. We do a extensive literature survey, then we start collecting lot of informations, and finally we collect so much of information on all the required data or all the required terms in the objective that we forget. It becomes a lot of confusion for us to what is to be included in the study and what is to be deleted from the study. So now, if you state your objectives clearly, you become very clear of what your variables are, what sort of relationships are you trying to find out, what sort of association are you trying to establish in your study. All this could be clearly stated in your objective, and what is your expected outcome. Once you do that, you will not be diverting. Like, if you take up, for example, you are doing a study on factors influencing absenteeism. You start collecting information because factors affecting absenteeism will be similar to the factors that draw towards satisfaction, employee satisfaction too. You start collecting information, so much of information, and finally you land up in collecting information more on satisfaction than absenteeism. Then you are diverted. So to bring you back to the focus, you really need to have clearly and concisely set objectives. The next is, it minimizes the wastage of resources. That is, now once you are not diverted, that is, once you are into the track, you have limited resources because you need to complete your dissertation within a specific period of time, or you have limited resources in terms of energy, in terms of time, in terms of money, and you have to optimally utilize all those things. So once you are into the right track, you have a focus on what you are supposed to do, it really helps you to conduct your research within the stipulated time with the available resources. That means it avoids misusing or extra using of your resources. And the most important need for your objectives to be stated carefully is, it makes your thesis or it makes your research readable, whatever we do, however clearly we have actually designed our studies, if we do not state our objectives precisely or we do not state it clearly, the readers will not be interested because we are doing all this for a set of target audience. It could be the academicians, it could be an organization when we are going to give a research proposal, or it could be for the purpose of evaluation when you are a PhD scholar, or it could be for getting a score if you are doing a managed MBA project. It could be for any of these reasons, but it is meant for a target audience. Okay, if the audience should get interested and understand what is being done, your object, because it's the objective, it tells you what are you going to do, what are you going to achieve out of the study, and it makes them clearly understand what are you trying to tell through your study or through your research. So these are the basic reasons why you need to refine your research objectives clearly. The next is, so before going into for framing of your objectives, I would try to tell you what are the common mistakes that researchers generally do when they frame their objectives. Okay, now framing of objectives generally comes from your research title or the research area. Now you take up your research title. From the title, you develop your research questions, and from the research questions, you come up. So research objectives are a little more using of action verbs into your research questions. Now converting of your questions into actionable form is what is called as a research objective. Now the common mistakes that we do is we generally take up too broad objectives, because having a lack of knowledge on what is the data to be collected or having a lack of knowledge on how the objectives are to be framed, we start developing objectives on a very broad basis. Like I have given an example over here. The objective is, now this study was to understand, as it is a study on the, so I'm telling you the title first, okay? The title is a study on the leadership practices prevailing in Indian industries, right? So you have gotten, you are planning to make a study on the leadership practices that is prevailing in the Indian industries, possibly maybe during the pandemic period too, right? So now you have stated an research objective which says an analysis of the leadership practices in Indian industry. Now, if you take up this particular objective, it fails to answer so many questions like what are the aspects of leadership practices that you're going to study in this? Because if you take up organizational leadership practices, you have so many terms in that. Like you have the ethical behavior, you have successive planning, you have employee motivation, you have employee retention, and you have building up of trust in the organization. So there are so many such functions that comes under your organizational leadership. So when it's such a broad thing, you just cannot make a study on everything. So you need to be more specific. So you have to come up with what practices are you actually going to take care of in your particular study. And now if I tell Indian industries, India has got so many industries: manufacturing sector, service sector, automobile sector, marine sector, right? So the IT sector. So there's so many, and all the practices, leadership practices in all these are not the same. There is nothing which is industry specific practice or a common practice which is prevailing for all the industries. There is no such practices prevailing. So you are not clear on what industry you are going to do. So when you make such broad research objectives, it becomes difficult for you to carry out your study in a proper direction or for you to focus. And again, you will be overloaded with information, not knowing what to do with the information that you have collected. So to overcome this problem of choosing a broad topic, you can always make your objective much more specific, like telling an analysis of the ethical behavior of leader on employee motivation in Indian healthcare industry. Now, if you take up this has got the answers for all the questions. Now, what are the leadership practices I'm going to take care of? Two practices, which is ethical behavior is one, employee motivation. So these are the two practices of leadership that I'm going to consider in my study, where I'm going to take care of this only in India, in the country, in the healthcare sector. So all those healthcare sectors that in the healthcare sector in India, I'm going to try to find out what is going to be the impact of ethical behavior of a leader on employee motivation, right? So this way, you have to set up your objectives precisely, concisely, and clearly, so that the reader understands what you are trying to tell them, or you also become clear on what you really wanted to achieve in your research. The next is never set up unrealistic objectives. Now, in total enthusiasm, what we do is we set up certain objectives that is highly impossible for us to reach. Now, I'll give you a simple example of the MBA student project. If an MBA student is conducting a qualitative research, for example, and he wanted to have an focus group interview to understand the leadership practices in the organization, and he plans to conduct interviews with all the CEOs of the top leading IT firms. For example, as a student, it is a right way of going in for conducting the research, but it is not possible for him to contact all the CEOs of top leading companies, come together for a focus group interview. So this, I think, was a little bit highly enthusiastic type of research project. So as a student, what he could do is he could contact the senior level managers or maybe the middle level managers of these leading IT companies, talk to them on what is the leader, have a focus group interview with them to identify what are the leadership practices that is prevailing in the IT industries. So you need to be much more realistic in framing your objectives, because if you're unrealistic, you cannot be carrying out your project within the stipulated time, and you will be using all your resources wastefully, out of which you will be receiving nothing at the end. Next is mismatched method with the time frame. Now, if you're framing your objectives which are not measurable, or if you're framing your objectives which are not realistic, you will not be clear in what techniques are you going to use, like what type of data you're supposed to collect, what type of analysis that you're going to do. You may not be clear in all those things. Most of the times researchers fail here. Like, they would have identified the objectives properly, but they would not have identified the method through which they have to carry out the study. So when they don't properly understand the method through which they are going to take up this particular study, they would be spending, because every research has got a specific time. Like the day one, I think somebody was telling, you need to complete your research within 3 years time. Maximum of 7 period time is given, but still you need to complete it within 3 years time, because the data that you collect will be relevant only for that particular period. Later than that, maybe the data may not be relevant at all. And at the time when you go in for your Viva, your data would be totally irrelevant too sometimes. So what you should do is, you should have proper objectives. That is, when you frame your objectives properly, you can clearly decide on what methods, what is the design that you're going to use, what type of data you're going to collect. Everything can be structured properly so that you could complete your research in the right time frame. So you need to take care of all these things. These are the common mistakes that we do. So you should never frame your research objectives very broad. You should never try to set up unrealistic objectives. All these comes into young researchers who are actually very enthusiastic when they do their research. So you have to be very careful when you're setting up your objectives. So generally, your objectives are called as SMART objectives. So I'm not explaining it. Almost I have told everything when it comes to your mistakes that you actually make. So SMART objectives, SMART is said to be acronym, which basically says S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R stands for relevant or realistic, T stands for time bound. So these are the things that you need to take care of. As I told you, you need to have very specific objectives which states exactly what are you planning to achieve. Your objective should be stated very, very clearly. It should give answers to what, how, why, when, and within which time period. All these put together is what is called as your SMART objectives. It should be measurable. That is, measurable is how much, to what extent. You should have answers to all this. When you frame your objective, you should be able to measure what you are trying to study. Now you have certain variables which are not measurable, then you cannot come out with your end results. So you have to make sure that you can always measure all the variables that you have taken into your study while framing your objective. Your objective should be achievable. That is, there should be if it's a PhD thesis, there should be an agreement between you and your research supervisor. The supervisor doesn't agree with what you have done, you will never be able to submit your thesis at all. So you have to, and your objective should also be achievable. You should write it in such a way that once you measure, you will be able to achieve what you have actually stated as your objective, because the entire thesis finally is evaluated based on how well have you achieved your objectives. Next, I already told you it should never be unrealistic. So that means your objective has to be realistic and it has to be done within the time frame. You need to clearly state at what time period are you going to finish up and within what period are you going to achieve the objectives. So it should be time bound with a clear end date on the time frame. Right. So these are what is meant by framing of your SMART objectives. So what is the role of objectives and how should you actually write down your objective statements? So when you're writing down your objective statements, you need to be, and you should ensure certain things. The first is you should take into consideration all the factors that are contributing towards the problem. Like if you take up, for example, the impact of television advertisements on consumer behavior. Now you should take down all the terms. Okay, so the problem is you're trying to find out the influence of ad on behavior. So you should try to find out what are the various things, what is the outcome and what are the various, so you should understand what is television advertisement, what are the factors that contribute towards television advertisement, what is consumer behavior, how do you define consumer behavior, in what operational terms are you going to define consumer behavior, all these has to be taken into consideration. Then your objectives, when you state, it has to be highly coherent. Coherent is, there should be some set of unity in the objectives. It should not be fragmented. If your objectives are fragmented, it doesn't give you a proper direction in carrying out your study. So you should always make sure that your objectives are coherent and they form a logical sequence. Like how are you going to achieve your objectives? Generally should be from your problem research question, in a logical way, you need to state all your research objectives. You should actually phrase all your operational terms very clearly and specifically, and you should try to answer the questions on what are you going to do, where are you going to do, how are you going to do it, and for what purpose are you going to do it. This I have told you earlier also. Most important when you write down your research objective is you are supposed to use action verbs. Okay, you cannot use terms like to study, to understand, to appreciate. These are generally vague and ambiguous terms. Such ambiguous terms should not be used because it will not give a clarity for you on what are you trying to achieve out of your research. So when you write down your research, you have to be very, very clear in writing down action verbs such as to determine, to compare, to calculate, to describe, to establish. So these are certain terms that you can use when you write down your objectives. Like what I was telling you earlier too, research questions. From the research questions, you come to your research objectives. So what you do is you reframe your research question by using these types of action words when you really wanted to write down what your research objective is. Now I have given you some, like based on the domain of the requirement of our research objectives. If the research objective, domain of research objective is knowledge, then you can use certain terms like to relate, to define, to describe, to identify, indicate. If it is comprehension, you can use it as assess, compare, classify, predict, understand. These are certain terms which are called as action verbs. Okay. Then if it is application, you can have it as apply, demonstrate, measure, illustrate. Okay, so you can just have a look into the answer. I'm not reading it out everything. Now, if it is synthesizing, if you want to build up, you are building up a theory or you are trying to build up some certain relationships, then you can always state it in terms of develop, formulate, integrate, construct, create. So this could be the terms that you use when you're actually trying to construct a research project. Now we are going in for how do we frame, and so this was in general, what are the mistakes that you do and what are the things that you need to take care of when you're trying to formulate a research objective. Now, how do you frame your research objective? Generally, you have two types of objectives, one called as a research objective, the other is called as the specific objectives. Now, general objectives otherwise is also termed as a primary. Some of them call it as a primary objectives and the secondary objectives. Now, general objective states what researchers expect to achieve by the study in general terms. Now, what is your expectation from the study is what is called as your general objective. To achieve these general objectives, you require some set of subset of objectives, which will actually contribute you to achieve your general objective. These subsets of objectives are generally called as specific objectives. So you generally have one general objective for the study, which is also called as the research aim. You can call it as a research aim, or you can term it as general objective. And from that, you can have maximum of 5 to 6 specific objectives. Do not have more number of specific objectives, because once you have too many objectives, there'll be an overload of information in your thesis. And the interest of the readers or the target group would be lost when they really want to understand what are you trying to explain in your research. So try to keep your number of objectives to the minimum, exactly to what you wanted to find out. So specific objectives are, or the secondary objectives are all those objectives that contribute towards achieving your primary objective or your general objective, and those should be stated in very specific terms. Now, take the example. I'm telling you the levels. How do you frame a research objective with an example? So first thing is, you can start framing a research objective. When you wanted to frame a research objective, you have a complete understanding of what your research title is. So read the title of the research very carefully and write down whatever you understand from the title, right? So how do you do that is, you extract what are the main terms that we have used in the title for understanding what our title is. Now, take an example. I have got a study here, a research title, which says a study of the impact of stress level and anxiety level on the academic performance of senior secondary students. A very simple study I have given you. So my title is to find out the impact of stress level and anxiety level on the academic performance of secondary level, senior secondary students. Now, what are the main terms that I have here? The main terms that I have in this study are stress level, anxiety level, academic performance, of whom I need to study all this of the senior secondary students, right? So first thing is, when you frame, you should be very careful when you frame your title. I think that you have done it in the earlier sessions actually. So once you frame your title, try to understand what are the main concepts or what are the main variables that you have in your title. Now you need to understand, again the next is, you need to differentiate between what are your dependent variables and what are your independent variables. Now in this study, it is the stress level and anxiety level are said to be your independent variable, and you're trying to find out the impact of these independent variables on what is called as your academic performance, that is a dependent variable. Now why I'm telling you this is, you need to have, if you do not understand what your dependent, if you're not able to differentiate between your dependent and independent variable, you would write a wrong objective. Like for example, in this study, I can have an objective like to understand, to analyze the impact of stress level on academic performance. Now, because I have understood that, my study is to find out the influence of stress on performance. Now, if I'm not clear on that, I can also state the same objective as to understand the impact of academic performance on stress level. That is also possible, right? Now, if my performances are going down, possibly I may be more stressed. So now, without having a clear idea, I have stated an objective which says that impact of performance on stress. Now, if I state that way, I'm not achieving what I really wanted to do in my study. So you should clearly establish what are your dependent variables, what are your independent variables, what are your mediating or moderating variables. You need to have a clear understanding of that. All this will be done in the first stage itself, when you are trying to understand the variables in your study. So the first step after understanding what your variables are, is generally to identify. So when you frame an objective, your first objective generally deals with identifying. Now, in my example, in the example that I have given to you, I should identify. Now, when I want to measure the impact of stress and anxiety level on academic performance, I should measure what is the stress level of the senior secondary students. I should measure what is the anxiety level of the senior secondary students. I should also measure the academic performance. So my first set of objectives would be to identify. Now, sorry. The second set. Now, coming to my research objective. My research objective is to find out the impact. Now, if I need to find the impact, I need to understand if there's any relationship existing between the variables that I'm studying. So my next set of objectives would be to establish that relationship. So I can write down my objective as to identify if any relationship exists between stress level and academic performance of senior secondary students. Now, why am I using the senior secondary students every time is my title is very specific to senior secondary students. So when I write down my objective, I should also be specific on whom am I trying to carry out this particular study. If I specify that in Chennai, I'll have to write it down in Chennai, customers in Chennai. If I write it down as college students, then I should be also specific. Whatever I specified in my title, I should use it in my objective. Then to identify if any relationship exists between anxiety level and academic performance of senior secondary students. And the next level when you frame your objectives would actually be to critically analyze. Now your objective is to understand what is the impact of stress and anxiety on academic performance, right? So now how can I establish the impact? I have established a relationship. Now I should critically analyze. How is the stress and anxiety going to have an impact? That could be my next objective. So every time when you frame an objective, you have from the title, understand the title first, then from the title, try to identify. First thing is you have to identify. The next stage of objectives would be to create a relationship. The relationship could be whether they are they related, or is there existing any type of relationship, could be your objective. And the last step would be to critically analyze. So this is how you frame an objective for your study. Now this is a sequential, right? So when you have an objective, that is what I said, you have to frame it. There should be coherence and logical sequence. First is you are identifying what are the variables. The second one is you are identifying what the variables are. Second one is you are trying to establish the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. The third one is you are critically analyzing your dependent and your independent. I have given you another example. Now, I think I have to make a spelling mistake there. I'm giving you another example by introducing another variable over here. Now, my title of the study is to study the mediating effect of organizational commitment on the impact of work-related factors and employee retention, with special reference to ceramic sanitary ware manufacturing industry in India. Now, if you take up my title is very clear. I have three objectives here. My three objectives are, one is work-related factors, the other one is employee retention factor, the third one is organizational commitment. Now my dependent variable here is going to be employee retention. My independent variable here is going to be work-related factors. And I also have given up a new variable which is called as the mediating variable, which is organizational commitment. So now I have understood these three. Okay. So now my first objective could be, right? So my general objective is to analyze the impact of analyze the impact of work-related factors and organizational commitment on employee retention, or it could be the mediating effect of organizational commitment to on the work-related factors impact on. I've not changed it here. Sorry. The general objective will change. Okay, the general objective would become to analyze the mediating effect of organizational commitment on the impact of work-related factors on employee retention. Right. So I can have my specific objectives like to understand the because now when I'm going to study the impact and I'm going to try to find out the mediating effect, I need to understand the demography of my employees too. So I can write down my specific objectives as to analyze the influence of demographic variables on work-related factors, organizational commitment, employee retention, to examine the impact of work-related factors towards commitment, to analyze the impact of work-related factors on employee retention, and finally my mediating effect, the mediating role of organizational commitment between work-related factors and employee retention. So this is how I can come up with my specific objectives. Okay. Now all these I have been telling to you, these types of objectives that we are framing, the earlier one example that I gave, the example that I gave you now, all these examples, excuse me, basically relates to survey studies. Okay, when you're going to conduct a survey, you generally use these types of objectives. Now, if your study is going to be experimental, right? Your experimental studies may not have all these sequences like identifying and establishing relationship and then critically examine. You may not have all these sequence. You may have very few objectives when you're going to carry out an experimental research. Now, take an example. Due to this pandemic, what has happened is your traditional classroom teaching has actually got substituted by online teaching. So you wanted to make a study on a comparative study on online, comparative study of the online and traditional face-to-face teaching of mathematics to senior secondary students. Now, teaching of mathematics, why have I given you this example is theory subjects are comparatively easy to teach online, but when it comes to problem subjects, it becomes a little difficult. So you're trying to find out how is you're going to make a comparison here. So comparison is you will be teaching mathematics for the students directly face-to-face method. You will also do the teaching by online. There's offline method and online methods. Both will be used for teaching the students. You would measure their academic performance. How are they performing when the lessons were taken online and when the lessons were taken offline? And you could actually compare and tell what is the difference, which is better, and so on. So now your objectives for this type of study could be to measure the academic performance of senior secondary students in teaching through online mode. Okay, so you have to first measure the, this is what is identifying, I said. You have to measure the academic performance on online teaching mode, academic performance, offline teaching mode or the traditional teaching mode. Then you have to identify the differences in the performance through online and traditional modes. So once you have measured the academic performance, you can always try to find out what are the differences existing there. And then you can make a comparison. Or you can also make a comparison like when you are trying to find out the differences, you can try to find out the differences of are boys performing better than girls? Okay, the academic performances in terms of boys, and then say online teaching has got a better impact on girls or a better impact on boys. All these could be done in this particular type of experimental research. So when you state objectives, it depends upon what type of research, whether it is descriptive, whether it is explorative, or whether it is experimental. You need to use different types of objectives for that. Okay, so I think to some extent, I have given you the complete idea of how to frame objectives. So once you have decided on your objectives, the next what comes in is what is known as formulating your research hypothesis. So now we will discuss here the complete process of how are you going to state your hypothesis. Now, once you have stated your research objectives clearly and examined the required literature review, now the researcher is actually ready to state the hypothesis. Now, what is meant by hypothesis? It is a formal tentative statement of the expected relationship between two or more variables under study. So you are trying to, that is, hypothesis is actually a statement that the researcher is framing regarding the expectation of the relationship that is existing between the variables he has taken for study. So now, what could be the relationship that is existing? Now you are just having an expectation, and through this expectation, you are trying to find out whether you are achieving your objectives or not. So now, when you start up any research, okay, as I have told you, when you are framing objective, every time a research starts with an research question. Now, these questions are converted into objectives as statements. Now, statements can never be tested. Okay, you need to convert those statements or translate those into some set of explanations or predictions where you can actually test those statements. Now, those statements which are put in a testable form are actually called as research hypothesis. Okay, so an hypothesis helps to translate the research problem into a clear explanation or prediction of the expected results or outcome of the study. So, how are you going to test? How are you going to explain your entire objective? How are you going to achieve your entire objective? Is done through what is called as framing of an hypothesis. The next is, so hypothesis framing is supposed to be very, very important as far as any primary research is concerned. Right. Now these hypotheses are the ones, again, which tells you what your outcome is going to be. Your objective states what your outcome is going to be, but whether you're achieving your outcomes, to what extent are you doing it, everything is being realized only by how you are going to state your hypothesis and come to a conclusion from that. Now, what are the various sources of your hypothesis? From where can you frame these hypotheses? Now, when you want to frame certain predictable statements, okay, which says the relationship existing between the variables, you need to have some source, some base from where you can state your hypothesis, because these hypotheses are said to be the base of any research. So now how are you going to do that? So the various sources available to you are theoretical framework, previous research, real life experience, and academic literature. Now theoretical framework or conceptual framework is one of the major sources for your hypothesis. There are now generally a survey research or a quantitative research takes up the deductive approach for carrying out your study, deductive approach in your design. There are actually, I think you would have done this in your earlier sessions. There are two types of approaches, deductive approach and the inductive approach. Deductive approach is you have a grounded theory. From the theory, you would like to frame certain hypotheses, collect certain data, test the hypothesis, and come to conclusion saying that the theory is applicable in the environment or the situation at which the research is being carried out. So this type of deducting it from already existing theory is what is called as deductive approach. Now you have what is called as inductive approach. Inductive approach is where theory is not, when you really wanted to formulate a theory, when you want to come up with a new theory, you go in with what is called as the inductive approach. Inductive approach is through your observations, through your experiences, you formulate certain propositions. These propositions are may be correct, may not be correct, okay? But these propositions are developed into small sets of hypotheses. And these hypotheses are tested and then generalized, and then you come up with what is called as a theory. So starting from zero, coming up to a full theory is what is called as inductive method. But starting from a theory, breaking it down and trying to apply that to the situation where you're studying is what is called as a deductive approach. Now in this approach, generally in a survey study, when we are framing hypothesis, we use a deductive approach. Okay, and we try to frame hypothesis based on the theory that is existing or the framework actually that we have created through our literature review. Now, for example, I have given you an example of work-related outcomes, organizational commitment, and employee retention. So this could be the theoretical framework that I have. So the various factors that I have identified under work-related factors were a work environment, training and development, work-life balance, performance appraisal, career development, supervision support. So these were the various factors that are identified under work-related factors. So I created and structure the conceptual framework here, which shows the relationship between these work-related factors, commitment, and employee retention. Now I can write on hypothesis here. Now what are the hypotheses that I can frame? One of the hypotheses is all the work-related factors have a positive relation with organizational commitment, and these factors have a positive relation with the employee retention, or organizational commitment mediates the relationship between work-related factors and employee retention. So these could be certain hypotheses that I can frame from the model that I have created. So this model clear, once you have an established conceptual framework, so you have to be very clear. Once you establish a framework, your hypothesis can be stated very easily. Another source is your previous researches that is being done by people. Now, when we do a literature survey, we can always frame hypothesis from the previous studies that is being carried out. Now, take for example, when you are doing a study, and when you're reading a paper, or when you're going through some articles that has been published, you came across a statement which said, where a researcher had found that the number of patients admitted with coronary artery diseases had increased body mass. So there was a statement which was given by a researcher saying that in a hospital, when he found people who were admitted with coronary artery diseases, he found that all of them were having higher increased body mass index, BMI. So now, as a researcher, when I came across this, I can always state a hypothesis in my study saying that obese patients have increased risk for development of coronary artery disease. Because it is established in a previous study by somebody, that was a finding there. I took that as my finding and put that as my hypothesis here. Like I'm actually carrying out a study now, which really I had come across by reading an article. I was reading an article on women entrepreneurship, and I came across a statement which told me that though there are a lot of girl students who are taking up engineering as their study, there are not many of women entrepreneurs in the STEM area, STEM entrepreneurship, okay, in science, technology, engineering, and management. Not many of them are there, successful entrepreneurs are there in STEM. So by that statement, taking up that statement, I took up a research study into that. That created an interest into me. Now I have taken up a study which says why, what is the reason that women students don't enter into STEM entrepreneurship? Is it because of the family background? Is it because of the, so I can establish hypothesis. So some of the previous research that is being done from the findings that I got there, I can establish a hypothesis into my study now, which I'm carrying out. Your real life experiences can also help you to create hypotheses. And the best example is, all of us know the law of gravity, which was actually established by, found by Newton. And this hypothesis was framed from his real life experience. When he saw the apple falling down, this was an experience for him. So he started working on it. And then this is most of the qualitative research, okay, where he's coming up with a theory. And he started coming up with a theory saying that all the objects, when they fall down, are attracted towards the center of the earth. Now this theory was, this hypothesis was developed by him through his real life experience. And the last source is your academic literature. There's a lot of literature that is available for every topic now at the click of your hands. Maybe at the time when I was doing my PhD or some 15, 20 years back and all, collecting of academic literature or review of literature was supposed to be the most difficult part of research, because you really need to have physical availability. You should get your literature review physically done. But now information is available to you at a huge level. Huge information is available to you. So from all those literatures, you can very easily define what is going to be your hypothesis. So these are the major sources that helps you in developing hypothesis. Now, hypotheses are generally stated in two ways: the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Now, null hypothesis is the one which states there is no relationship between two variables being studied, or there is the one variable does not affect the other variable. Now, you have to be very clear when you are trying to state your null hypothesis and your alternative hypothesis. Now, this null hypothesis, which states that there is no relationship existing, is a negation of what the experimenter actually wants to predict or what he expects to be the outcome, the relationship to be. It is a statement which is negative or which is opposite to what actually the researcher wants. Whatever he wants to reject, he generally states it as a null hypothesis. It is actually used when researchers are trying to compare their findings, whether their findings are because of chance or is a relationship really existing. Now you state a null hypothesis with an assumption that if the null hypothesis is supported, The relationship that exists there is only because of chance, and it does not support the idea that is being investigated. I think you should be clear with that. Is always the null hypothesis is stated with an objective stating that the null hypothesis is a chance of, hypothesis, and if the results, whatever results you get through null hypothesis, are only because of chance, and they do not in any way support the theory that you are going to study. Okay, it states results are due to chance and not significant in terms of supporting the idea being suggested. Opposite to that is your alternative hypothesis. The hypothesis that states there is a relationship between the variables that is being studied, or one always affects the other. That means alternative hypotheses are generally being established very clearly as the things that you expect the outcome to be. What are the expected outcomes that you have are generally stated in terms of alternative hypothesis. And it believes that the results are not due to chance, and they are significant in terms of supporting the theory being investigated. Okay, so you have two hypotheses: the null, which says that the results are because of chance, and the alternative, which says that results are not because of chance, but they are very significant and they contribute very significantly in supporting this theory that is being studied. Now, you have two more ways, that is the directional hypothesis and the non-directional hypothesis. Now, these directional or non-directional hypotheses are all alternative hypotheses, okay? These are not the null hypothesis. All these are used when you are stating your alternative hypothesis. A directional hypothesis specifies the nature of relationship or difference that is being predicted. A directional hypothesis predicts that a specific group or condition will have higher or lower or more or less of something, or predicts the specific direction that a correlation will take place. Now, if you take up, it states directional hypothesis basically tells you what is the nature of relationship existing. It will talk in terms of the presence of the concept that we study. Suppose, for example, it is the relationship between advertisement and TV advertisement and consumer behavior. Consumer behavior, maybe we'll talk it as recall rate. So we can always say that the recall rate can increase with the frequency of advertisement. If you give up something of that sort, it is actually called as directional hypothesis. I've given you some examples here. Or there exists a positive relationship between work-related factors and organizational commitment. This is called as a directional hypothesis. So it tells you some sort of the nature of relationship that is existing. So the example that I've given you here is deaf children whose parents are deaf will acquire language faster than the deaf children whose parents are not deaf. That means here we are telling they'll acquire the knowledge much faster. Faster is that word which tells you the direction. Or there is a positive relationship existing between perceived organizational support and organizational citizenship behavior, POS and OCB. So this positive relationship is what is called as the direction, which is called as a directional hypothesis. So you can state your the alternative hypothesis as directional hypothesis. Non-directional hypothesis. Non-directional hypotheses are those which actually tells that there exists a relationship, but doesn't tell you the nature. Okay, it will not explain you what type of relationship is existing. It's not being explained. It only tells you there's some sort of relationship or some sort of difference existing between the variables. Now, if you take up here the example that I have given, male and female consumers differ significantly in their perception towards online marketing. Now, it tells you here that these two groups differ. It doesn't tell you who has got better perception, who has got less perception, or who has got a positive perception. Nothing of that is being given in the hypothesis. It just tells you that there's a relationship existing, right? Or you can tell like organizational commitment is independent of the perceived organizational support. That means there is no differences actually, or there is no association existing between organizational support and POS, which was a theory that is being established. So when you do not have any type of direction that is being given, then that is called as a non-directional hypothesis. Now you write, again I'm telling you once again, you have to be very clear. These are all called, these alternative hypotheses are called as research hypotheses. And generally we write these hypotheses in the research methodology chapter. Okay. Now, most of the general mistake that the researchers do when they write the hypothesis is they state null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis when they do their testing. Okay, and when they write up in their research paper, or when they write the hypothesis in the research methodology chapter, they take up all the null hypothesis and put it there. Okay, so please, when you are writing up your thesis or when you are writing a project, your research hypothesis is not your null hypothesis. Your research hypothesis is that what are you expecting out of your study? What type of relation are you expecting is what is called as research hypothesis. So you should be very careful in framing your research hypothesis and never take your null hypothesis to be the hypothesis that you have, because you can never accept a null hypothesis. I'll tell you that when I come to testing. Okay, so I have given you some questions, some examples over here. How do you frame a research hypothesis? So the first is, I have a research question which I have developed saying, do students work better on Monday morning than they do on Friday afternoon? So my question is, does the performance change on a week, first day of a week and the weekend? They really differ. For that, how can I measure it? How can I find a solution for this particular question? So I can always make an objective saying to compare the performance of a student on Monday morning and Friday afternoon. Now the performance has to be measured. So to measure that, I need to conduct a research. And I need to, when I conduct a research, I'm conducting an experiment. I'm taking one set of students. To them, I'm giving a material on Monday morning, measuring their recall rate on Monday morning. To the same set of students, I'm giving another material on Friday afternoon, measuring their recall rate on Friday afternoon. Now my hypothesis can be, my research hypothesis can state, students will recall more information on Monday morning than on Friday afternoon, because that is what is my expectation. My expectation is that on Monday, when they are fresh, they will recall more when compared to that of Friday. And this hypothesis can be tested. Whether it is right or wrong can always be statistically or mathematically tested. Another example that I have given you here is, the recall rate of advertisement improve with an increase in the likability of advertisement. Now, when people start liking an advertisement faster, more, will the recall rate of that ad change? That is the research question that I have. So my objective for this study would be to assess the impact of advertisement or advertisement likability on recall rate. And I can write down a hypothesis here stating that higher the likability, greater is the recall rate of an advertisement. Now, if you take up this is a directional hypothesis. It is telling you that they move in a positive direction. The more likability you have for an advertisement, the greater is going to be your recall rate. Another example that I have given here is, another example which I have given you here is, thus my research question is, does using a cell phone while driving affect the driver performance? Okay, so the research objective that I can have from this research question is to explain the relationship between using of cell phone while driving and the errors committed by the driver. Now, instead of taking driver performance directly, I have made that into a statement which becomes my objective to measure the errors that a driver would commit in the course of driving. Right? So when I state my hypothesis for the study, my research hypothesis would be, motorists who talk on phone while driving are likely to make errors in driving course than who don't talk on phones. So those who are driving those who are talking over the phones are supposed to be making more errors when compared to that of people who don't talk over the phones. So this could be my research hypothesis. Now, you should be very careful. As a researcher, we need to take utmost care when we are framing up these types of research. because these research hypotheses are the ones which is going to lead us to conduct the study. What type of analysis are we going to use? Okay, what type of data are we going to collect for the study? Everything depends on what type of hypothesis have we stated. Now, if we state hypothesis like relationship, you have to carry out association tests statistically. If you have got differences, you have to come up with ANOVA of tests of ANOVA when you carry out your research study. So you need to be careful when you're stating your hypothesis. Now, testing of hypothesis. Okay. Now, it is not now when you take up your research hypothesis or the research hypothesis which I told you are alternative ones, they are just certain statements. Okay. These statements cannot be tested directly. These statements have to be conducted. Testing of hypothesis is always done only on a null hypothesis. And that is why null hypothesis is said to be very important. If it is not that way, we can just state any hypothesis as it is. But hypothesis testing is only done based on your null hypothesis. So when you have statements, you have to convert those statements into what is called as null hypothesis. And this null hypothesis can be created by adding certain words, because I have told you null hypothesis are negative statements, negation statements of what a researcher is predicting. So I can always add up no, not, certain negative words of these sorts into my research hypothesis and convert that into an null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is therefore the opposite of the research hypothesis in terms that it states there will be no change in the variable understood. Now, why do we give so much of importance to null hypothesis? Okay. Why should we actually convert your research hypothesis into null hypothesis? The first reason is it is due to the fact that null hypothesis relates to the statement being tested, whereas alternative hypothesis relates to a statement that is to be accepted if the null hypothesis is rejected. So what are we trying to accept is what is called as alternate hypothesis, and what we really wanted to reject or we don't want to accept is what is called as your null hypothesis. So this is a null, and we actually start testing a null hypothesis only framing, that is we start the testing of hypothesis only by framing a null hypothesis. Now if you want an example for that, or I can give you an analogy for that. If you are a prosecutor in the public prosecutor in the court, okay, who is trying to make that a particular defendant is a culprit. How can you prove that a person is culprit? You need to prove that the defendant is a culprit. How can you do that? You can only start it by stating that the culprit is not innocent. Okay, you cannot prove something by just saying that he is a culprit. You can say he is a culprit by stating that he is not innocent. So you test this, he is not innocent. You prove that he is not innocent, which indirectly implies that he is a culprit. Okay, so the defendant is not innocent is what is called as null hypothesis. Okay, and you reject this, he is not innocent, and then accept that the defendant is a culprit. So this is the same when you test your hypothesis too. So if you need to test, you need to accept what you are expecting out of your study. You need to start testing it from saying that does not exist. And after testing that does not exist, you reject it and then tell that you are going to accept what you really wanted or what is going to be the outcome of your study. And that is why stating of null hypothesis is very important. The next is the final conclusion, when the test has been carried out, is always given in terms of null hypothesis. You will never have any statements which is written in terms of alternative hypothesis. After carrying out the statistical test or a mathematical test on your the hypothesis or a null hypothesis, you will always state your results only in terms of null hypothesis. We will say either reject the null hypothesis in favor of the alternative one, or do not reject the null hypothesis. And we will never conclude saying reject H1 or accept H1. This will never be written down. See, generally students make a problem of writing it, but technically we are not supposed to write it that way. What students do is, when they write down their findings, they write down the null hypothesis is rejected, so we accept the alternative hypothesis. It is not written that way. It is said that the null hypothesis is rejected in favor of the alternative hypothesis, which implies that the alternative hypothesis holds good. Okay, so always we write down the results only in terms of null hypothesis. If we conclude, do not reject H naught, this does not necessarily mean that the null hypothesis is true. Okay, now if we do not reject H naught, so what does it mean? Do not reject H naught is that your study is not in favor of the theory that you are actually considered for your research, right? So it doesn't mean that your null hypothesis is accepted. We should never write down that the null hypothesis is accepted, because null hypothesis is always stated keeping in mind it has to be rejected, or it is a negation statement. So you should never write in your thesis saying that because it is not significant, null hypothesis is accepted, can never be written in your thesis. You have to be very clear that the null hypothesis is not, that is, we do not reject the null hypothesis. That is how you are supposed to write down in your thesis. So how do we state these null hypotheses? The same examples that I gave you, there we had an statement stating that students will recall more information on Monday morning than on Friday afternoon. So a null hypothesis therefore that can be written as, there is no significant difference in the amount of information recalled by students on Monday morning compared to that of Friday afternoon. So there is no significant difference. So I have given that as my null hypothesis. For the second example that I gave there regarding likability of advertisement, I can state my null hypothesis like, there is no significant association between recall rate and likability of an ad. So it states that there is no relationship, significantly there is no relationship existing between these two. Now the third example where I have given a research objective is, the motorists who talk on phones are likely to create more errors. The null hypothesis for that could be written as, there is no significant difference in the number of errors on a driving course by individuals talking on a phone as compared to the individuals not talking on the phone. So there is no differences in that, could be taken up as your alternative hypothesis, right? So when you are testing your null hypothesis, all the statistical tests are done on your null hypothesis and never done on your alternative hypothesis. This I'm just briefing you out once again. The results of a test will enable us to either reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject a null hypothesis. Never use the words like null hypothesis, accept your null hypothesis, or reject your alternative hypothesis. These two things should never be used when you are writing down an research. So this is what is the conclusion of, I think to some extent you should have understood on how to write down or how to frame an objective and how to frame your hypothesis. Right. So my next topic, I'll just briefly do it because of time constraint. We are already 11:45. Is what is qualitative research and what is quantitative research. Now, when I told you the inquiry methods that we have in research, the inductive method and deductive method, the quantitative research are generally based on deductive method, whereas your qualitative researchers are generally based on the inductive mode of inquiry. A qualitative research is an unstructured exploratory research methodology based on small samples that provide insight and understanding of the problem set. So when you really wanted to explore on certain things, when you wanted to find out when you want to have an in-depth insight of the problem that you're dealing with, you can always go in with qualitative research. But when you are trying to quantify, try to establish some sort of relationship or difference, try to test those in terms of hypothesis statistically, then that particular research becomes your quantitative research. Now, I have just given you a brief over here, a comparison of the quantitative versus the qualitative research. In general nature, the quantitative research approach is to seek precise measurement in numerical form. So here, all your objectives, your variables are measured in numerically. For example, if you say the level of satisfaction, highly satisfied to highly dissatisfied, which is converted into ratio data, which is converted into when you have different types of data, nominal, ordinal, it's actually an ordinal data, but still what we do is by giving weightages to that, we convert those highly and strongly agree to strongly disagree as numerical data. Okay. Next, in a qualitative research, the subjective approach to seek in-depth description in narrative form. Here, we do not have anything as in numerical measures or certain things. We always narrate what is the reason, what could happen, why is it happening. You could always give a descriptive form for your research. The knowledge of study variables. Okay, the variables are clearly understood and defined in advance by the researcher. Like I said, when you are framing the objectives, you need to clearly understand what are your dependent variables and what are your independent variables, what are your intertwining variables, the moderating variables, the extraneous variables. You need to have a clear understanding of all those things. So in a quantitative research, you understand all those in the beginning. But in a qualitative research, the researcher may have some idea, but he may not be very clear, and he'll be very vague. He will establish it as he goes on conducting his study. As far as the aim of the research is concerned, the quantitative research aims to identify and count the variables, to test or refine the theory and the hypothesis. That means here the quantitative research actually tries to quantify the data, it tries to test an hypothesis, or it tries to refine a theory that is being established. It tries to apply the theory to a new setting. This is what is done in a quantitative research. But in a qualitative research, you try to collect complete information, detailed description of the variable, and you try to develop theories and assumptions. That is what is the aim of. Here the aim is not to test a theory, it is to develop a theory, or it is to develop an assumption. When you come to research problems, problem is deductively reasoned, which does not change over the course of time. Now, you come to a research problem in case of quantitative research through deductive approach. You have an established theory. From the theory, you come to research questions. From the questions, you establish your hypothesis, you test it, and these remains fixed. There is no flexibility in terms of research problems in case of quantitative. Whereas in terms of qualitative, you state certain problems in the beginning. It is done through an inductive inquiry method, and these are not fixed. Okay, they keep on changing, and they are formulated constantly during the entire course of study. Now, in terms of planning and quantitative and qualitative research, planning is done very carefully, because all what we spoke now on designing an objective, formulation of hypothesis, all this is being designed before the data is collected, because the research process starts from identifying the problem to finding a solution for that. When you do that, you need to collect information, you need to test the hypothesis. So you need to properly plan each and every stage in your research process if you're doing a qualitative research. But in qualitative research, the design emerges. The design is not fixed, okay? You can always plan it as and when you start going with the research. Now, your type of research design that you use. In case of quantitative research, we have studied the research design. You have done it yesterday. You have different research, that is the experimental research design, the causal research design, or the descriptive research design. All these designs are used, quasi-experimental research design. All these are used in your quantitative research, okay? But in qualitative research, you do not have a fixed design that is being used. As and when you continue your study, you will come up with new designs. Mostly, it is exploratory design that you use there. You can use phenomenology, that is, you can have a principle that is being established and then try to verify that. Or you can have ethnography. Ethnography is actually putting the people into the right situation, the real situation, and trying to observe what are you trying to study from the behavior of the respondents is what is called as ethnography. You can make a study of the historical researchers, and from there come to an proposition that could be tested. So this is the research design that could be followed when it comes to qualitative research. Now, type of samples that you use. In the quantitative research, you have to use large samples because all your testing, all your statistical testing can be done only if you have a large sample. Similarly, you should also understand the distribution pattern of your samples in case of quantitative research. That is, we generally take that the distribution is normal, the population is normally, samples are normally distributed. Whereas in qualitative research, because you conduct an in-depth study, you cannot do it with a large sample size. So generally, you have a very small sample size, and the findings which you get are not generalized. Okay, it depends upon the individual. Suppose you take a case study, the findings of the case study is only meant for the particular case. You can apply that to different similar cases and then come out finally for a particular theory, developing of a theory. But as a method, it only applies to that particular sample from where you are trying to collect the information. The type of data in quantitative research is very easy because you can collect it through questionnaires, you can collect it through structured interviews and so on. Whereas in qualitative research, it is highly time consuming for you to collect the data because it is not very easy. You just cannot have a structured method to collect here. You have to go along with the subjects on which you are actually carrying out the research, and then based on the involvement of the respondents, your data collection will be considered. So it is basically highly time consuming, very much more costlier when compared to that of the quantitative research. The methods for data collection is generally survey, observation, structured schedule that you have, questionnaires that you have in quantitative research. Whereas in qualitative, you use focus group interviews, face-to-face or one-to-one interview or personal interview. You use case studies. These are the methods that you have. Sorry. Okay, and when you come to analysis part, because the data is numerical, you can use all the descriptive analysis, inferential analysis of statistics can be used on quantitative research. Whereas in qualitative research, you basically use the analysis is done by in terms of word analysis, the picture analysis, okay, or you have a descriptive coding for the words that is being used. So you cannot have a standard analysis pattern for in qualitative analysis, but you can always analyze it by how the subjects listeners, respondents are reacting to the questions that is being asked to them in the method of data collection. So this is a brief of what is qualitative and quantitative research. Right, so I would stop my presentation with this and find out if there's any questions that could actually be asked regarding the things that I've done. And I think I have, to some extent, actually, 1 second, sir, it is joining. I fairly touched on all the informations that I'm supposed to be presenting. Okay. So if people have any questions, you can surely ask me that.
Madam, we have very few questions.
Yes.
Before that, indeed, you extensively covered all the topics, madam, which is taken. That is, I'm very grateful to you. You covered maximum things in a given time.
And I think within the time, I think I was too fast also in doing it because I had, it was too extensive. So I wanted to cover everything. So
indeed, it is a great presentation, madam. It is actually great learnings to all of us, madam. Yes, sir.
Yeah, madam. Very
Yes,
nicely presented, extensively. You have mentioned,
you.
but 2 points can be added. It's only an addition, not a question.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Sure.
While testing the hypothesis,
Yeah.
usually we come across 2 types of error. So one is
Type
the
one,
error.
yeah, type 1 error and type 2 error.
Type 2
Yes,
error.
sir. Yeah.
Type 1 error, also known as the error of the first kind, occurs when a null hypothesis is true but rejected.
Yeah.
Type 2 error, also known as the error of the second kind, occurs when the null hypothesis is true but erroneously failed to be rejected. So these things can be added to the hypothesis testing.
Yes,
So,
sir. I didn't do that because my area was actually formulating a hypothesis.
right.
So why I touched up on those small topics there was because null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis should be properly stated. Only for that I touched it. If I was supposed to be doing testing of hypothesis, so yes, but rightly said, we need to always take into consideration these two errors, type 1 and type 2 form of errors.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, madam.
Yes, sir. Anything else? Any other questions, sir, from the participant side?
So, madam, one question is there, madam.
Yes, sir.
Is it a mandatory to use no in the null hypothesis? For example, no significant.
Yes, sir. No or not. It is actually negative statements. Like you can, because this is one which we are supposed to be rejecting, right? So if we need to reject, we need to make it as a negative statement. So if you want to state a negative statement, generally we use the term not, no, or research hypothesis.
Madam, one more question, madam.
Yes, sir.
How many objectives is enough for the research?
Sir, you cannot actually definitely tell that these are the number of objectives that you require, because depending upon how many number of, what is the time, what is the research area that we have chosen, what is the subject title that we have taken. Because if you have four variables in your study, then your objective naturally increases, right? But
Exactly.
always make sure that you have one main objective, which is called as the aim of the study or the general objective, and not more than 5 or 6, maximum to 5 or 6. Okay, and if it is not possible, you can club those variables, those objectives too. Like for example, when I told you on organization, the example which I told you was, or suppose work, I gave you a general statement said work-related factor. Now I had taken some 7 or 8 work-related factors, correct? But now if I state my hypothesis in terms of everything, then it becomes so many number of objectives. So I can always club it, bring it together and give a common name as demographics, the influence of demographics. Now some of them states the influence of age, the influence of experience. You don't have to come up with such things. You can restrict all those there and come maximum, you can go only up to 5 research objectives, not 5 or 6, not more than that. Because that generally makes your research more overloaded with information. People will not be interested in understanding what your research actually is.
Usually the hypothesis, they will have 2. So usually 4 to 5 objectives will be there. In case 3 hypothesis is there, then you have to go up to 6 objectives.
But I don't know. I'm not very sure whether it's a hard and fast tool like that.
But usually one will be the explanation of the situation, other is the problem analysis, the is the suggestions to the problem. Usually we will have
right,
this.
Right. That is for the objectives. That is what I said. See, you generally have it as, sir, now suppose, okay, but I don't know. I'm not very sure if there should be something which is identification. When you state up an objective, you need to have identification, establishing of relationship, and critically analyzing that. These 3 should be there. You cannot leave these 3. So in these 3, how many objectives are you going to come up with is what as a researcher you need to decide on.
Madam, one more question is there, madam.
Yes, sir.
What could be the sample size, maximum sample size for qualitative research?
Sir, another lecture is there, sample.
Yes, sir.
Sir?
Another lecture is there on sampling.
Okay, I can just explain. Sir, not for if you really want to have an in-depth study when you're going to conduct a focus group interview, not more than 6, maximum of 6 to 10 members will be there in a focus group interview. If you are going to do a case study, it is a single case that you're going to take up and analyze it completely, right? And if you're going to do a face-to-face interview, depending upon the knowledge or the subject that you are considering for your research, you should take it as not, it is generally not more than 20, sir. Maximum of 20, but generally it's 6 to 10 members that you include in your samples when you are doing a quantitative research. Only then you can get an in-depth knowledge of the individuals. Otherwise, it's very difficult for you to get an in-depth knowledge.
Thank you, madam. And madam, one more last question.
It's okay, sir.
Is it a mandatory to put research question in our PhD thesis?
Sir, actually, there are 2 ways that the research thesis are written. In some cases, they include the research questions as research problems. When you write the research problems, they give one paragraph which says what is the problem, and under that they put down the research questions. Or you don't have to have the research questions, you can directly write down your research objectives. But it is mandatory to have objectives, not mandatory to have the research questions. But questions actually give you a little more clarity on what are you trying to study in your research.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much for your valuable insights on the topic. It is indeed, it is very great learning for all of us, madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And I
thank you
think I have, to some extent, justified what I'm supposed to do. Right, sir?
Actually, you have done maximum, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for all the participants. We'll meet again at 3 p.m. today. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all the participants. And you can always, if there's any queries on anything, you can always I'm just putting it on the chat. You can always reach me out on my mail ID, which is Jayasree, Jayasree. So one second. Jayasree.Krishnan @gmail.com. Any information on research, you can either contact me there, or even I'll give you my contact number. My contact number is 98401-65290. I've just put my mail ID and my contact number in the chat box. So anybody who would be interested to understand, if you have any doubts when you carry out your study, or if you want anything that is to be clarified, always feel free to contact me, either through mail or through my mobile. Okay. Thank you, participants. Thank you all for being available with me for the whole session.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the great session.
Thank you all of you, ma. Thank you.